Now, without further ado, I welcome Randy Cohen and Patricia Spears Jones.
Well, I'd like to ease into it, Patricia, but I'm afraid that once Eli said, without further ado, my hands are tied and I have to, so I suppose we just have to start. So who is your person?
Okay, well, we had a long conversation and we came up with my person after I thought about some other folks, and it's the wonderful poet Lorenzo Thomas. Lorenzo Thomas was died in 2006, around the age of 60. He, at that point, had published 3 full-length collections, several chapbooks, lots and lots and lots and lots of criticism. He was part of a group called the Umbra Workshop when he was still living in New York City. Do you know anything about that?
This was this a Lower East Side thing?
Yeah. Well, there were, during the 60s, there were all kinds of Black organizing and Black arts movement things. And there was there were people in Harlem, people in Brooklyn, and there was this whole cohort on the Lower East Side. And indeed, one of the things I know that the lovely people at CUNY have been doing over the last few years is kind of reconstructing all of that, because David Henderson, thank God, is still alive. And so Lorenzo was one of the young poets, Black poets, who was part of this workshop. And at one point it included Tom Dent, who was from New Orleans, Ishmael Reed, David Henderson, a whole bunch of people. I met Lorenzo through the late great Steve Cannon, who I'm sure you know about. And Steve, along with Ishmael and Joe Johnson, had a press, and they were publishing a range of authors, including Black people, but a lot of Asians, all kinds of stuff. And so early in the 70s, they published Jambalaya, which, I had pulled it out. It's an anthology that had a Filipina, a poet, a Black American woman poet, Lorenzo, and one other person whose name I can't remember. And I got assigned to review it, and it was like going into like a wonderland of writing. And Lorenzo just was a different kind of voice. It was very, it was Afrocentric, but not in any kind of way that there was no stereotypes, no cliches, he came in from some other vantage. And that gave me an idea of how I could also make work that would be from another kind of vantage, because I knew I wasn't sounding like most of the people that I was writing with and stuff. So
had you known about his work before you reviewed this book?
No. I came to New York City. I knew about David Henderson because he had published the Mayor of Harlem, which I think is still in print. And I read that when I was a senior at Southwestern at Memphis, now known as Rhodes College. But I didn't know any of these people's work until I came to New York. I mean, New York was like, it just was a cornucopia of amazing people and who were doing amazing things. And they were from all over. And the reason why I even knew about Lorenzo was because of his good friend, and I'm blanking on his name right now, Ted Greenwald, because he and Ted grew up and went to high school in Queens. And Ted was a mainstay, he was a mainstay at the Poetry Project. And when I went to the Poetry Project, Lorenzo was one of the few Black poets who anybody, outside of like, famous people, anybody mentioned. But he'd already kind of started easing out of New York City by then.
He went to Texas, did he not?
Well, he went south. he went to Georgia, he went to Arkansas, and then he wound up in Texas. And which is fascinating to me. I mean, it was like I went the opposite direction. I mean, I left my home in Arkansas, went to school in Tennessee, worked for a few miserable months in Atlanta, and then came up here. So I literally, we were like a parallel.
Oh man.
It was like, I had no idea. But I think he needed space. I think he needed a lot of like literally physical space at the end. I don't know why he did, but I think he did. He needed that.
It can be a very risky thing meeting people whose work you admire. That because someone is a wonderful writer doesn't mean they're a wonderful person or a person that one will like. I avoid it. Not that I'm getting any invitations, but when you admire, you like the work, you knew the work before you knew the man. And so when you went to meet him, were you worried about that?
No. I mean, I was 23 years old. I was like, oh, somebody else to meet? Okay, So it was like, no. I mean, I never, ever, I guess I don't think like that. I think people
like a coward, you mean?
No. I think I don't worry about, I mean, I'll put it to you this way. My first gigs were with Madeline Mines. So I used to watch Lee Brewer do his thing. And he was tough as nails. And I'm like, if I can handle him, I can handle anybody, right? And so it was, what was great for me was to know that there was somebody who was a little bit older than me, because he was a little bit older than me, who was making this amazing work that was really, it was complicated and difficult, but he was talking about some of the same things that I was trying to talk about. Like he loved jazz, he loved blues. He was really fascinated by very strange, European paintings. Like Krenec? Why not? How do you say his name? I don't know. Cranach. That's how it's spelled. And he, but also like Ishmael and those other people, he was also into into Césaire and all the wonderful people who were creating a new kind of writing who came out of like the francophone phone world. And so he did translations of Leon Dumas and all these people. It was amazing. He was an amazing poet.
Francophone world. I didn't know that. I did know that when he was born in Panama, and when his family came to the States, when he was a little kid, his family was Spanish speaking.
Right.
And was his interest in Francophone poetry, that was just something that he developed as he got older as a reader?
I think that there just were, I think because he came from Panama. I think that there is I think it's much more crystallized now, but back in the 70s and early 80s, I think a lot of Black American poets were looking to see who else had been doing things. I mean, there is Pan-Africanism, and this was sort of like, but the folks who came out of the Caribbean, they were like they were just down the street, I mean, there's a whole bunch of people who also translated the Cuban poets, So, so it wasn't just Francophone, but he really was interested in them. So I'm looking at my piece on him that I wrote for that when I did I did a talk, literally, it was really hard to do, like about a month after he died, for Poets House in their series on poets on poet, poets talking about poets, and it was difficult, because the other thing about him for me was that he was a champion of my work, and just he just was a champion of my work. He was somebody who thought whatever it was that I had was important and needed to be read. And so, he I once was, I think the last time I saw him, when we just were hanging out together, was in Houston, and because we had lunch, and I wanted to go to the Deming Foundation, but it was closed. So I was able, we just hung out and we just talked. And what he did was he got a gig at the University of Houston, I think. But it wasn't in the creative writing department. I mean, he was in a different department. But because he had a university connection, he could then do things like go to conferences around the club. I mean, he worked that. He went all over the world, and giving papers, meeting other scholars, meeting other poets. And he said one of the things that he would often do, and was to talk about the younger poets. And I was one of the younger poets. And indeed, in his book, Extraordinary Measures, yay! He talks about, in the last chapter, it's called At the Edge of the 21st Century, and it's an essay that's on Erica Hunt, Willie Perdomo, Harriet Mullen, Paul Beatty, Thomas Sears Ellis, and me. And every last one of us has published several books since 2000. And Erica and Willie, I think, have just published new books this year. So he was really, he kept his ears open. I mean, often people who are older than you don't want to know what the young people are doing, or think it's stupid, or they think you're imitating them, all that other book. He was not like that. His ears were open.
It is rare to find that kind of generosity of spirit. You mentioned his affection for jazz and blues, and I know he set up the Juneteenth Blues Festival in Houston. And I've heard you compare your own work to blues. And is that affection for blues a common connection between the two of you?
Yeah, of course. Yes, it is. And I think I mean, I grew up I grew up in a small town in a rural county, and so and only 45 miles east of Memphis. So I heard the blues on WDIA and all these other places, and so I grew up with that, and of course with rock and roll and everything else. And that's the kind of, I think the 50s and 60s were a really great time for this kind of incredible energy, American music energy, with the blues as the basis. And one of the things that I think that the Black Arts Movement did was to rescue the blues from kind of being from being seen as useless or old-fashioned, or only about victimhood in some kind of way. You know what I mean?
I do.
And Lorenzo definitely was like that. Plus, I think he liked the. I mean, I think that there's parts of, you know, he understood that, you know, we're all not supposed to always be happy. You know, that people are in pain. That, you know, you lose things. Your girlfriend or your boyfriend leaves you for somebody else, or you don't make as much money as you really think you should. All these kinds of things that are very, very real and honest. And I think he knew that when really great blues men and women speak that truth, it is the deepest truth there is.
Would you read a little of his work so we can have that voice in our heads?
Okay, you made me do this.
I know, I know. I'm deeply sad about it. I was so
All right,
ruthless.
this is okay. This is literally the last poem in his last book, which was Dancing on Main Street. And there is a collected poems. Okay, Backwater Tears. It was when neon was no longer available that they went bad. There was nothing to cut the formica, offbeat shouting dirty words, dropping glitter on backyard lands. Nothing seemed to help. It was 1:45 in a small, dull town. Jukebox exhausted, coffee burned stale, a go-go girl slumped on her bedroom slippers. Punches some feeling back into her thighs. It is on those days musicians started dancing. Didn't have to touch their instruments. In fact, they couldn't even stop the music playing. It was so much sadness in this world.
It's so hard to move on from that. I want
I like
time.
the part where he says the go-go girl sloughs on her slipper on bedroom. It's like, and you can see it too.
You can see it too. It is really visual. Let's talk a little about your place. Where is
Okay.
your place?
Well, I printed out a very bad photograph here of just a little hillside in Oakland, California, Northern California. I love the Bay Area, and I've been going to the West Coast since like 1975. So I've been there like 5 or 6 or 7 times. Anyway, and there are several things that are amazing to me about the Bay Area. One is that San Francisco is like this big, that you get on a ferry and you go to Sausalito, and it's like you're going to Shangri-La, right? But it's a tourist. I mean, it's like a tourist town that feels like an actual real town, which is interesting. And it's just the literally the colors of the water, the lushness or dryness of the landscape. Because they're both. I mean, I went to California several times, and I would ride around. Everything would be brown, right? Because there was a drought. And then in 2016, why there was a California spring. I had never seen a Northern California spring. I did not realize how utterly beautiful it is. How the colors of the flowers and the greenery is so sharp and amazing. And like, it's almost like they've been waiting for 2 or 3 years to finally like go, hi, I'm here, I am blooming. That's one part of it. The other part, of course, is the poetry, thing. So the first time I went to San Francisco, I went to the City Lights bookstore, like every other poet in America. I tried to pick up the guy who was working there. I failed.
Of course. Oh, I'm sorry. I bet he's sick about it now.
Yeah, well, whatever. Anyway, he was cute, and it was just, but it was like sort of amazing. And I was staying at Ansem. Oh gosh, what's his name? Ooh, wonderful poet, and I'm just blanking on his name right now. Anyway, I looked out the window and calla lilies were just growing, and I went like, in New York, you have to pay like $5 a stalk or something for this, and but it was like it's a kind of place where there's just so much beauty, um, and there's all kinds of ways in which people deal with it, and then there's just an extraordinary amount of suffering. Because the other thing I also saw while I was there were the homeless encampments, um, that were everywhere. And and this was what, 5 years ago, so I'm sure it's 100 times worse. And it was shocking. But then again, during the history of California, it was not, you know? And that really was sort of really sad. It's almost as if people continue to not want to deal with the fact that you have to house people if they don't have money, and you have to find some way for them to take care of themselves and their families in a really good way. And it was almost as if, and there's all this wealth. I mean, I was there. This is when they were building these really ugly, I mean, this in San Francisco, these ugly buildings downtown over an earthquake. I'm like, who are these people? The Silicon Valley people are crazy. So, but then you go to Sausalito and you go and you have, dinner on a little boat, and you drink really good wine and the sun is setting. And it's paradise.
But I noticed that when you chose your place, you expressed affection for the Bay Area, but you didn't pick Silicon Valley, San Francisco, and you didn't pick, idyllic, fabulously wealthy Sausalito. You picked much grittier Oakland.
I haven't got to that. So the thing I like about Oakland are several things. One is because one of my best friends lives there and lets me stay at her place, and she has a picture window of the national. But there are the hills, and there are the valleys, and there is a kind of way in which, the last time I was there, she had to change her gardens so that everything would be drought resistant and all this other stuff. But we would walk around. That's where I got this. We would walk around in the neighborhood and just see these amazing blooms everywhere. And then the strange thing about Oakland is that it's a place where there is a great deal of wealth, but parts of the city are allowed to just not thrive. And it's just an odd, I don't understand it. I mean, that's going back to the California thing. I think that the Silicon Valley stuff, which is literally right there, it's not like it's far away. All of those kinds of attitudes are also coalescing in these areas where Berkeley and Oakland, and Berkeley is like the little pretty, pristine place, and then Oakland is like the fast girl at high school. But they both need to be there, and they both need to shine. But it's that. But you keep thinking there's all of these marvelous things that are going on, and they are. There are great dancers and philosophers and organizers. I mean, there's a good reason why the Black Panther Party started there, and actually some of this, it carried out some of his best ideas and some of his work there. But you also, there's great, but it just feels like there's all these kinds of missed opportunities. Like you turn a corner and why isn't that happening? And then you come back to the places where people really do get together. They really do make a community. And then when I was working for LISC, one of the places that the organization supported was Oakland LISC. And the Fruitvale Station area was one of the places where a lot of money went into it. And so I've been to the Fruitvale Station, and every time I'm in that place, I think, what a really beautiful place. Why do all these people die? In horrible ways. And, and the poem Nia that the New Yorker published last year, I think, had to do with the death of Nia Ashley, who was killed in the Fruitvale Station. And I'm like, it's just, and I realized that, of course, I live in New York City. There was literally a shooting on my street a couple of days ago. The danger is part of our lives, and so is beauty.
When you see the beautiful parts of the Bay Area, succulent plants and wine on houseboats, does it make you want to stay there?
No.
Why not?
Because I like New York.
I love New York too, but you speak with such affection.
I do not want to live in Northern California. First off, you have to have a car.
Yeah, I hate that.
You have to have a car.
Yeah, I hate that.
You cannot not have a car. If you don't have a car, your life is miserable. That's one. And it's very pricey in certain kinds of ways. It's beautiful. I love visiting. Some things, it's good to be the tourist too. I don't mind being a tourist.
And there are places I like just because they're not where I live. I need to be refreshed. I need to be somewhere else, but only for a little while. Mostly I want to be where I am.
Well, if somebody wanted me to stay in their house, not a household, but in their apartment in San Francisco for a month, I would do that.
For a month, but you wouldn't move there. You're not leaving.
And I never thought about moving there. That's what's really interesting. But I love visiting. And the people who live there, I think, are amazing human beings. They do all kinds of wonderful things. So, yeah.
Do you write differently when you're in the Bay Area than when you're in New York?
Right. Well, what do you mean? I'm not sure I understand that. I haven't been in the Bay Area as a writer. I don't write.
As a writer.
I'm
okay.
Tourist.
So you're not working. Okay. All right.
Oh my God.
No, I think of you as always working one way or another. That you can't turn off your mind.
No, but I don't know. I'm busy. The only time I wrote, and when I was on the West Coast, is when I'm at the Community of Writers, the Sierra Nevadas, because you have to literally write a poem every day. And the last time I was there, I was also a faculty, and faculty have to write. Everybody has to write every day, and it was great. No, I don't go. When I go to places, I go to experience what's there. I walk on the ground. I can find my way back to wherever I need to. Literally, first time I went to San Francisco, I stayed in Oakland with Keith and Lonnie Abbott. Thank you to them. Keith Abbott is now with the other poetry ancestors. And Lonnie Abbott was she's like a person who loves San Francisco. And so she like basically walked me from one end of it to the other, from Court Tower all the way down. I still remember seeing Muir Rukeyser and Lawrence Ferlinghetti getting into a car as they were about to go off somewhere to do something. And we kept on walking, and we walked all the way down to the wharf, where the new Portman Hotel had been built, because and it's where the bathrooms were. When I came back to back to San Francisco 2 decades later, and I had to find a bathroom, I went, I know exactly where to go. I went back. See, so I'm one of those people.
Well, it's the mark of a sophisticated traveler to know where the bathrooms are.
Hey, every woman understands that one.
Oh yeah. Let me drag you back to New York and talk a little about your thing.
Well, I talked about a fan. Here it is, and it's broken, unfortunately. But I collect fans. I have been for years, and this one was sent to me by Kulu Kadogo she picked it up when she was on the tour, the For Color Girls tour, when they went to Australia. And so, and I'm assuming it's from Malaysia or something like that. It's, and it had a thing at the bottom. It's really beautiful. And this was like 1979 or something. I've had this thing for a long time. So, but I have all kinds of fans. I have feathered fans.
Ooh, nice.
I have several of those. I have artsy fartsy fans.
What makes them artsy fartsy?
Well, this one was actually from La Fête de la Nouvelle Orleans, a summer celebration. And somebody, and I can't remember who, intervened. And they created something different. Now hold on a second. Voila. These are fans by the wonderful artist who also looks like my twin, or used to when we were both skinny. She's still skinny, I'm not. Marilyn Nance. And this is called, this is from her show, Religion, Spiritual and Religious Expressions of African Americans. And she also did this, and this was called Embrace, Reveal, and she gave those to me for my birthday. So
I should say that since we're essentially a radio show, that they're fans with a single word: embrace, inspire,
and reveal.
And reveal.
Which I thought was real interesting, because she knows I'm a poet, and so the reveal one was really powerful to me. I mean, everybody asks you, can you inspire people? And I go, I don't know.
Do they? Is that really what people ask you? No one's ever asked me if I inspire people.
I have been in situations where people say things like, well, what will you do to inspire the youth? Or what will you do to inspire? I'm like, I have no idea. I'm trying my best to live my life as well as I can. What inspires me is if somebody does good work, whatever that might be. So if I do good work, but is that inspiring to the youth? I have no idea. You have to ask the youth that. So it's ridiculous. Anyway.
So was the Malaysian fan from was that your first fan?
Oh heck no.
What was your first?
I grew up in the South, darling. I grew up in the Church of God in Christ. So, so I am used to funeral fans, church fans,
Church fans, yeah.
funeral home fan. I mean, the whole, and I do have one with Jesus, for the funeral home. And so I appreciate fans. And I have like little tiny ones from New Orleans that I got when I went there many years ago. I have an Elvis fan that somebody gave me. Don't know why. Okay, it's a gift. I'll keep it. But I like, when we were talking, I said, I collect fans, teapots, and something else. And I said, and I realized that I like beautiful things that you can use, right? And you can use fans. And I haven't done it in a while, but now that Pearl River, that wonderful Chinese market is reopening, I'm gonna try to go and get myself some sandalwood fans, because one of the things that I remember before air conditioning, froze us all to death, was being on like subway and needing to fan myself and also have some scent that was not that, how shall we say, in New York in the summertime. So and sandalwood fans are wonderful for that. And I just think and they can be incredibly elaborate. And I've gone to museums and seen the ones that were made for somebody in the 18th century in Spain, with all kinds of frills and blah 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 blah. And it's beautiful, and you go like, wow, and then you think, whoever got that fan probably maybe didn't have the best. They may have had a more comfortable life, but maybe not the best life.
Just that you mentioned air conditioning, and that does the rise of air conditioning mean the fall of fans? They no longer have utility. If when you go to church, it's 45 degrees in there, the people aren't fanning themselves anymore. Is it all over for the fan?
But there are situations where the air conditioning does not work, and I am always prepared.
Really?
Yes.
You're packing a fan wherever you're going?
I know in the summertime I carry a fan. You don't know what's going to happen.
Oh, that's why I carry a book. That's the only thing I've learned as an adult, is life involves a lot of waiting, and always have something to read.
Yeah, but I do that too. But fans are, they're beautiful, and they're utilitarian, and and you can hold them in your hand, and they make wonderful gifts.
When the fan becomes a decorative object, when it lacks utility, I guess maybe that's one of the things we mean by art, is it lacks utility. It's just a beautiful object, or has other functions. Do you like it less?
I'm not even sure I understand that question.
Well,
I'm sure that there's someone who makes fans that are like, an art, like my friend Helen Oji makes paintings of kimonos, right? They're not kimonos, they're paintings of kimonos. Sure that there are plenty of people who probably have made photographs of, but I don't particularly like that kind of weird separation. I think there are more elaborate anything. There are more elaborate teapots. There are ones that are made out of pure silver with blah blah blah, and so they're very expensive, and so they cost a lot more. They do the same thing. You may or may not use them. And Marilyn Nance's photographs on her fans is a work of art. But if I had to use it, I could do that too. So but I'm not going to frame it. It's the way I feel about quilts. I mean, I think that, there's a certain kind of fetishization of objects that I think may or may not be fair to what the intention of the object maker. That the wonderful quilts from G's Den are utterly beautiful, but they were also utilitarian. My friend Sabre Moore, who was one of the Heresies Collective people, for years, sort of foregrounded quilting in her painting practice, and so now all kinds of people use quilting as part of their art practice, and so there, is extremely, I think, important to, often what happens is things that are of the domestic, right, are diminished because they are connected to female, to women, and and I, so I think I am for respecting and honoring and using the really beautiful, well-made things that make my life more comfortable and frankly make me look good, because when you have a really beautiful fan, people go, who is that?
Oh, they do that. There are some cultures that seem where the fan has a particularly strong place.
Oh yeah, like
and
Japan.
I'm thinking of Japan especially. They are a fan culture. Does that make you want to go to Japan?
I wanted to go to Japan not because of fans, but I'm one of those people that I don't know a lot about it, but I love Japanese cinema and also the arts. I did kimonos and stuff, and one of my early poems was about Hiroshige's mountain, woodblocks. It's an interesting, and I also many years ago read all the Sea of Fertility tetralogy. I can't believe I read all that. Mishima, my God, he was crazy.
What's crazy?
But he was crazy, but
He was crazy.
But he also he captured the Spring Snow novel, probably captures youthful exuberance and ambivalence better than anybody. So, but yeah, it's just I mean, I have friends who I went to college with Japanese students, and one of whom is now a major illustrator there. And it's not. I would love to go to the East. I don't think that's going to ever happen in my life. And I would love to go to Africa, of course. And I've been to Europe a few times. So I would love to, before I have to be in the walker, I would like to travel,
Before we take some questions from the audience, would you read us a little something of yours?
Oh, okay. Now I have to find something. I had something and now I'm I'm going to do this. This is for you, Randy. New York accent. It's amazing how people can say all right with no L's in sight or sound. The L's expelled from mouths large and small, old and young. L's have taken leave of New York and moved to Birmingham or Budapest or Ceylon. Is there a Ceylon? I miss the L's. Those two consonants lull around a speaker's mouth, soft and promising, all right. But these displaced elves shun belief that indeed, yes, all right is all and right. Word is knife sharp, irony conquers consonants, and I worry for the vowels like the A's in Manhattan. Heard them lately?
Patricia, thank you very much. Thank you.
You're smiling. I love it. You're smiling.
Well, I miss my L's. Some questions. From a fellow fan enthusiast. I have a collection of Broadway production fans. Do you collect
Wow.
live performance fans as well?
Oh, wow. I wish I did. That sounds wonderful. What was the most, I wonder what the most favorite production was.
I didn't know there were Broadway production fans. Did you know that?
You know, I have all of my, what's it called, those little playbill things. I have 1,000 of them, you know.
Playbills, yeah, I guess you can use those as a fan, but they don't really count. You know, it just annoys all the people sitting next to you. Here's an unrelated, and not a fan question. Have you ever performed your poetry to live music?
Yes, several times. I worked with, often with a wonderful violinist, improvisational violinist, Jason Wayne, HWANG, and he actually has set some of my poems to music, also, and some other, and I've worked with some of the people. So we did an incredible performance about 3 years ago. Yeah, for art's sake at Roulette. It was just dynamite. It's amazing. Yeah. So yes, I have.
Yes. Another question, a whole other, also not a fan question. I expect all the questions to be about fans.
Why?
Because I liked your fans. Did you write poetry as a child?
Yes. I think every poet writes poetry as a child, even if it's not any good. And yeah, I started writing when I was around 12.
When you were, I would say every child writes poetry, but not every child becomes a poet. Did you know when you were writing as a child that this might be your life?
I had no clue. No.
And how did you know? When did you know?
I think when I was 30.
Oh, that's really late.
No, I mean, I think I knew that that poetry was going to be the center. I mean, I was writing the whole time. But that's when I finally sort of said, I have to claim this as what I do.
Someone asks if you ever knew Allen Ginsberg.
Oh, sure, of course. I mean, I was the program coordinator at the Poetry Project from 84 to 86, but and every year we would do the annual workshop poetry benefit, which when I was working there started at 7:00 at night and ended at 3:30 in the morning. And Alan would stay there till the end. He was amazing.
Do you see your work in relation to the Beat Poets in any way? I don't, as a reader.
No. I mean, I definitely am. Sort of New York school. I see my more relation to somebody like Frank O'Hara.
This seems. It's back to the what? How can you inspire the youth? This is, and apparently it's from a youth who wants some inspiration. I'll give you the address. You have to rush over there in some kind of.
I'll feed you.
This is what inspires your creative flow, and does spirituality come into it?
Well, actually, some spirit. I am a practicing, quote unquote, caveats around it, Christian. So I do believe in the divine, and that does help a great deal, especially in the last few years when things have just felt like, what the heck? But I am one of those people who loves to read, loves to listen to music, goes to see work. I've written. I like feeling like I'm in conversation in some sort of way with people, with writers, both living and dead, with painters, musicians, with architects. Today is Joseph Beuys's 100th birthday, and
I didn't get him anything.
And one of my poems is called "Boys and the Blonde," because it's an invented relationship that I put him and Marilyn Monroe together. You have to be there. So, so I think I try as best I can to be open to experience, to knowledge. I want to know what people are doing and thinking and saying, and that kind of it energizes me. It makes me think more. It makes me feel more, and it gives me another way of looking at
Someone asked the question again, kind of from the opposite direction. I said, I've appreciated hearing you and sitting in on classes. Can you speak to ways you mentor other people now?
Ooh, well, I think the person who's been on my class can probably tell better than that. But mostly, who that is. So, but I think I just do what I just said. I ask people to sort of look at things from a different, look for the vantage points that you don't know. Look for perspectives that you don't have. How can you find a way to connect with that or not? What kind of dialogue can you build? And what more do you want to know? Sometimes you read people and they use words that you have no idea what they're talking about. And then you realize they're using scientific language. And so you have to go and find out what that is so you can figure out what their metaphor is. That kind of thing. We have brains. We need to use them. The worst thing that the only thing I don't like in any of my classes is when people say things like, I'm not sure how to enter into this. I'm like, well, walk through the door. It may be that monsters are there. It may be angels, or it may be a Dior gown. I have no idea. So, but you won't know unless you walk through the door. You won't know.
I know that you have to go inspire some youth later tonight, and
Not really. I don't. I
you're
absolutely
on call 24 hours a day.
I'm going to go and drink some whiskey.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I have to go inspire some youth. But I think we have time for one more, and it's quite specific. Did Fei Chang and the Basement Workshop influence your work?
Well, not so much my poetry, but Fei. Oh my God, we're still missing her. And that's how I met Jason White and a whole bunch of other people. The Basement Workshop was a place where all kinds of artists and writers of color could really hang out and work together. That she opened up that space. It was specifically meant for the Chinatown youth and others, but she also opened that space up so that all kinds of people could work together, and they did. And I think it's because she, like Faye, who had really strong sense of justice and generosity. I want open and liberal in the old-fashioned sense of the word society. I want to welcome everybody in. I'm sick and tired of the kinds of language and the dismissal that's made by specifically people on the right, but in some other places, to new experiences. If we don't talk to each other, if we don't find out about each other, don't give each other some space, literally, how will we move forward? How will we move forward? And Faye allowed that space for us to come together and ask those questions.
Very nice. Thank you so much for answering questions from us tonight, Patricia. It was really a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad it worked out. I'm giggling.
I'm glad you are. I've had other guests who were weeping and threatening to sue, so
amazing.
giggling is much better.
Yeah, you're amazing. You're just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you so much, Randy and Patricia, for such a wonderful evening. To everyone, have a great night. Thank you.